So today we're actually going to have more of a reality check. We're going to get into the warning to those who don't fear him. Because he does warn us that, well, let me rephrase that. Not only does he tell us, hey, if you fear me, you get all this great stuff, he also has a warning that not fearing me brings some calamities. It brings all kinds of repercussions. So let's understand how he thinks about, what he feels about, and how he approaches those who do not fear him. And this is the warning to those. This is all about don't fall for those false perceptions that you could easily fall for, that when other people are doing what they're doing and it's getting results, or at least like it looks like it's getting results that you desire, that they're actually doing the appropriate thing to get the result. He goes, an astounding and horrible matter has come to be in the land. The prophets have prophesied falsely, and the priests rule by their own hand, and my people have loved it so, and what are you going to do at the end of it? So now let's just figure out why this is. So it's a foolish people without heart. They're not fearing Yahweh. They're rebellious. They're backsliding, etc. And why is all that? Because their leadership, their priests, their leadership are ruling by their own hand. They're prophesying falsely. What does prophecy mean? They're claiming to have speaking the word of Yahweh with authority when really Yahweh hadn't said it. Yahweh's got a whole different sort of time frame perspective than we do. See, if we get away with something, we think, oh, because I've had people do something, and it could be something, whatever it is, and it has nothing to do with Torah necessarily, but they'll do something, they'll do it wrong, but it worked, and they'll do it wrong a few times, and it worked. And then they'll get convinced that they're doing it right. And then all of a sudden, they'll do it one more time, and it blows up. Even though I told them that's not the right way to do it. See, but just because you did it, does it make it right? I'm going to use a really bad analogy here from my ill-gotten youth. But for example, if you were playing blackjack, okay, the total you're looking for is 21. And let's say you have 20, and you take a card and you get an ace. Oh, it worked, I got 21. Let's say you did this 3 or 4 times. You may start to think that's a smart move. Okay, when it's a very dumb move. Do you see what I'm saying? So the result is not the measure of whether or not something's right or wrong. You can still get a result that's desired doing something that's wrong. That doesn't make it or prove that it was right. Am I making some sense here? So we have to be careful that we're not measuring what we're doing against the result. We need to measure it against the word. Because the result we're looking for is, what does Yeshua say? We're laying up treasures where? In heaven. So you may not get the result that you think you should be getting here now, because that's treasure for later. And it shall be, if you diligently obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, to guard and do all his commands, which I command you today, that Yahweh your Elohim shall set you high above all the nations of the earth, and all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you if you obey the voice. But guess what? You're not going to obey the voice if you don't have the fear. Because fear leads to obedience. The only other reason you will obey is because you agree. Because then it's really not obedience, you're just doing it because you want to do it anyway. By the way, let me point out again, because it's always good to point these out. Submission, and it's not just for ladies, by the way, all of us need to learn to submit. We all have to submit to Yahweh. We all have to submit to Yeshua. Submission is only a word that applies when you're doing what you don't agree with and don't want to do. If you desire it, want it, and agree, it's not submission, you're just agreeing. So if I want you to do something and you are supposed to be submitting to my authority and you agree with me, that's not submission, and so you go ahead and you do it. No, it's when you don't agree with me or you don't want to do it or whatever, then it becomes a submission opportunity. So until you disagree, there's no submission. So please, wives, stop telling your husbands you're submissive if you only do it when you agree with them. That's not submission. It doesn't count. Men, don't think you're submissive to leadership if you're only doing it when the men that you're submitting to are in line with what you want. It doesn't come into play until you disagree, until it's not what you would rather do. Now, by the way, it's also not submission if you do it with a look on your face like you're sucking on a pickle, and griping and moaning behind their back and all of that stuff. That's not submission either. Okay, submission is, I'm going to do it with a smile on my face, trusting that you are supposed to be the one in charge. I'm supposed to follow, and I'm going to let you lead and trust in all that, and not be grudging and whining and complaining and griping and blah, blah, blah. That's when we come into submission. Now notice the people he's talking to here are the people that he said he called. He poured his Spirit on. He opened up their ears and their eyes and their hearts. They had the ability to get this, but they refused. And now he says, and then, don't be surprised. Some of us wonder, why isn't he answering my prayer? Well, I don't know. Did you fall into any of this? He says you're going to call and I'm not going to hear you. You got stuff to deal with first before I'll hear you. You got some I'm sorries and I apologize and repentance to do. And he says, look, let them call, but I'm not going to answer them. Let them seek me, but not find me. Because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of Yahweh. There it is. They didn't choose the fear of Yahweh. That's why all of this stuff happened. If they chose the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge, the beginning of understanding, the beginning of wisdom. Think about what it means to be in a mindset that you would strive with the priest. In other words, if you're going to strive with the priest, what are you going to do when just a regular person wants to reprove you? That's why he says, however, let no one strive or reprove another. You know why? It's a waste of time. You guys already strive with the priest. Why are you going to do it? Are you going to listen to each other? He says, so why bother to reprove anybody? They're already striving with my priests who are trying to reprove them. Does that make any sense? So he's like, look, they're already that. Look at the attitude they have. Their attitude is that they would actually strive with a priest. Of course, none of you should be surprised if people strive with the pastor or the rabbi. Oh, and they do. But Yahweh's saying, don't do that. If he's that wrong, go away. Just go away, leave. Don't be striving with the leadership. Striving doesn't mean just having a disagreement. We can sit down and talk and we can have a disagreement. Striving is when the leadership is telling you this needs to be fixed, and this needs to be changed, and this needs to be done, and you're just striving against them. You don't want to receive reproof. We had someone who used to attend here. He had to be reproved. We gave him time to fix it. We gave him actually twice the time we told him to fix it. He did not fix it. We had to tell him he had to leave. Now, he didn't strive with us, he just ignored us. You see how that's problematic? And that wasn't me. When I say us, the whole leadership together. All right? And so that when we read this verse, it's realized it says, look, we're talking about why would you bother to strive with it, to try to reprove somebody if they're not even willing to listen to the priest? They're certainly not going to listen to you. They were doing it their way, not Yahweh's way. Okay, you can't do it your way and think it's okay. It's his way. And so yet they were claiming, though, that they were doing this in his authority. They were doing this to him. And so we got to ask ourselves, do I fall into that category sometimes? Am I trying to claim that Yahweh's okay with something he's not okay with? Or claim that to worship him and to obey him and to follow him is okay the way I'm doing it, even though it's not exactly how he said it? Because I'm going to spin it as best I can to convince myself and flatter myself that it's okay? Oh boy, we're capable of doing this. We are so capable of doing this. Those who do not fear him, he's going to blast and he's going to take care of. But notice the other part that I missed there, because I see it in my notes here. It's those who don't change. It's those who don't change. Because I really wanted to make sure that just go to verse 19. Didn't need to go the rest of the way. Because in verse 19, he says, look, El, even he who sits on the throne of old, does hear and afflict them. Who them? Those with whom there is no change. That's the point I wanted to hammer. It's a good thing I have notes. Notes help you remember what you're supposed to say. See, the problem is, change isn't fun. Change isn't comfortable. Nobody likes change. Oh, sure, we want change when we want a bad situation fixed to a good situation, but we don't want to change. We want our circumstances to change. Okay, so my circumstance is terrible, and I don't like it, but I'm not willing to change in my behavior or my actions or my attitude in order to make the circumstance change. I just want Yahweh to wave his magic hand and make it all be okay. And Yahweh says, He says, those in whom there is no change, is those who do not fear Elohim. He says, those guys, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. You've got to be willing to change. You know, we've talked about this often. Come as you are, but please don't stay that way. That's the system we live in. Yahweh says you can come as you are. Everybody gets to come as they are. If he calls them and draws them, that don't matter how ugly you may be before you got here. The whole point is that we expect, and he expects, that you're going to change. Now, not necessarily overnight, but that over time you're going to change. The problem is, we don't like change. Can we trust? Can we have the faith? Can we fear him enough to go and do all these things that way? Can we move forward in trusting him? Or are we going to not understand that those who do not change don't fear him? Because he's going to put us through some pretty serious changes. Are you up for that challenge?